There are millions of people around the world that dream of becoming entrepreneurs. They think that entrepreneurship equals freedom. No one to answer to, full control of your time, and knowing that all your time and energy is spent on building your dream, not someone else's. Who could resist that? But we often forget that everything comes at a price. Behind that shiny story lies anxiety, financial stress, endless rejection, and sacrifices. Still interested? The following is a conversation with Mahmoud Bartawi, a serial entrepreneur and host of the Business with Bartawi podcast. From learning business by his father's side to exiting a brand he built from scratch with under 500, he shares what it really takes to survive failure, to reinvent yourself, and is why he is now on a mission to support other entrepreneurs in their journeys to the top through his podcast. So if you've ever thought about starting your own business, dealing with rejection, doubting your value, or wondering if one success guarantees the next, then look no further. This episode is for you. And if you enjoyed this episode, guys, if you could please do me the small favor of hitting that subscribe button, would really help me build the show and build the channel and bring more amazing guests and inspiring conversations. But that's enough for me for now. Let's get to the episode. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Hope It Helps. And I have a very special guest with me today, Mr. Mahmoud Bartawi. Mahmoud, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you for having me, Khalid.
Man, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. So, Mahmoud, I found out about you, I think earlier this year or a couple months ago when you launched your podcast, Business with Bartawi, which we're going to get into a little bit later. And then I started doing research about, your background and stuff. I know you were the founder of Under 500, one of the co-founders of Under 500, and you guys had a massive exit, with Kitopi and stuff. And now you're working more, you're focusing now more on the podcast and acting more as an advisor, helping other entrepreneurs, in their journey. So what I wanted to talk to you about today is entrepreneurship. That journey, it's what you do, it's what you've lived, it's what you've breathed. So I like to always learn from people who have had success in different things, and also to have an honest and real conversation about, we did exit, but through that exit, there was a lot of shit. There's a lot of shit that went down. So that's what I want to dive into today, Habu. But before we get into everything, why don't you give all of us a little bit of background about yourself, and we'll take it from there.
Thank you for the amazing introduction, Khalid, and thank you for having me. I think I'm super excited always to do a podcast where I know for sure there's entrepreneurs that are listening to this, or someone in their 9 to 5 that's thinking about building a business. For me, introduce myself. When I was 13 years old, I went to my father and asked him for a motorbike. And the minute I did that, he told me, "Get your shoes on, come with me to work tomorrow." I wore my shoes, went to him to the office, and it was actually a factory, a contracting company, many employees in the thousands. And he gives me to a manager, and the manager gives me a broom and tells me to mop the floor. So I get to mopping the floor, and as soon as I start mopping the floor, I turn around and my father is gone. I start feeling the sense of shame. These other people around were looking at me like, why is the boss's son cleaning the floor? And that moment stayed with me. I thought, it has to be that this can't be the reality. But no, it was. And the manager, he just pointed at different spots on the floor. And it felt like forever. But after a couple of hours, I turned around and I see my father, and I look at him, and he comes over and says, "Mahmoud, to get to the top, you need to start at the bottom." And that's when I realized for all of us in our lives, by the way, I never got that motorbike.
This
was a punishment for me asking him to get the motorbike. But I think all of life is, for me, I saw, throughout my life, I realized at an early age that you need to struggle to get what you want. Not everything is handed out to you. And I think that's a superpower. So everyone that's here that feels, that at some point they have some kind of a struggle, know that that's actually your superpower, is to be able to manage that struggle and to come out doing different things that you want to achieve in your life. And I think from a young age, I understood nothing is for free. Nothing gets given out for free. You need to do something to get something. And that kind of, is why I'm here at the podcast, and also why I started my own podcast, was to help people with stories of other people that they see. Share those stories as well. So this is why I like, what you're doing, Khalid, and really happy to be here sharing my story, whether it has to do with my brand, that I took to 7 countries and exited my healthy food brand under 500, or about my podcast. Happy to share with you and your audience anything you wish to learn.
Habibi, thank you, man. Appreciate giving us the context and that story. As actually, you went to exactly where I wanted to start, which was that time when your dad took you to the office. I didn't know the context of you mopping the floor and all that, so that was very interesting. What I was like reflecting. I'm like, okay, so you had that experience at 13, and then from my research, every year from 13 to 16, you would go in the summer and work as an intern in one of your dad's companies in different areas and doing different things, and then. When you wanted to get, I think, a car, he said, all right, I'm not going to pay you anymore. You have to go find someone to pay you to get that experience. So that's when you got into call centers, and that's how you got into the HSBC call center too. So I was sitting and I was reflecting. I'm like, do you think, because I can ask you this question in 2 ways, but I'm going to choose a different one. Do you think you would have been able to achieve what you have till now without having those lessons?
That's a great question. For me, it came to me that to get something, it came to me when I saw around me everyone kind of working to get what they want. The hardest person that I saw working was actually my father. He was always busy, sometimes too busy for his family as well. And I would think to myself as a child, there has to be always, I kind of was brought up to understand that there has to be something has to give.
Mm-mm.
And it's tough to learn, but I think at some point in everyone's life, that's kind of where the natural evolution takes you. So, yeah, I think early lessons, you learn them early, you learn them good. I know many people in many parts of the world working at a young age is normal. I think everyone should get their hands dirty, and there's something about managing, and there's something about doing. So I think when you're young, it's good if you should understand, selling and doing, and you should understand if you can sell something or build something. So if you're a young kid and you're that person that is selling something in class, you have kind of candy or a CD or whatever it is, or you're someone that likes to build something, pay attention to yourself, find out what it is that motivates you. And I think it's good to understand early on. So back to the day of the call center, I remember my first day walking in there. This was HSBC Bank, part-time. They said they'll pay me. They wanted UAE nationals, and I wanted to buy my first car. I remember going in there. I didn't know anyone. It was me and this other UAE national, and the rest of them were all non-UAE nationals. And to me, most of my life has been around different people. So that wasn't the main thing. The main thing for me was dealing with the manager, who I felt didn't really like me. And no matter how much I tried to prove with that manager, it was the truth that this was my first call center job, and he kept teaching me. And I kept taking it personally, telling myself, there's no need to feel bad. There was this one time where I was on the call with a customer, and he was listening, and he came after, and he started telling me, you need to speak this way, you need to greet the customer, and all these little lessons that made me feel bad at the time. I just pushed my emotion away, and I thought, there has to be something good that comes out of this besides the money. And that's the personal growth that I got when I became friends with my manager. So it taught me to put that aside. You have to learn. And with him, we did some really great things together. I got my first car. It was a part-time, it was part-time with HSBC. I got my first car, and, we even, this part-time job that moved from earlier now became an HSBC, and it would continue all the way through until I got my full-time job. So for me, it was, great experience, to know how to speak to a customer, to learn how to sell. These are things you don't get taught in a textbook.
100. You said it right there, man. Especially, I think, the sales aspect. So this is one of my biggest frustrations as I got older is, why was I never taught life skills? Why was I never taught how to sell, operations, finance? Oh my God, financial literacy. How do you think about money? How do you manage money? How do you but in school I was taught this is how you calculate the area of a triangle or whatever. I'm like, what the fuck is that gonna do for me now? Yani, it's thank you. Okay, that's great, cool to know. But now we have ChatGPT to figure that out. So, but what you said was very interesting to me because I resonate with that story. I think the first time you do something and there's an expert with you, someone who's done it before, and they come tell you, it's hard not to take it personally because you start thinking like, oh, I'm like, Khalid is bad.
Yeah.
It's not that Khalid doesn't have these certain skills. Khalid is bad because he doesn't have these certain skills.
And there's no one that starts knowing it all too.
Exactly. We all learn. Everything. You know, hindsight's always 20/20. You look back and you're like, oh, I would do something so different, but that's kind of part of the process, isn't it?
Yeah, and you know, I think for that person that's listening and thinking, you know, that's hard or that's something, you know, I think for me the big learning here was you have to get your, you know, Mike Tyson says you never know, your plan never works out. You always have a plan until you get punched in the face, and to me that's the reality of you trying something new.
Yeah, you gotta expect the punch. You know what I'm saying? I think, I love that you brought up that point. I think, but we go into it not ready for that punch.
Exactly. We think it's going to go smooth sailing. I'm going to nail everything 10 on 10.
Easy. No failure, no mistakes. I'm perfect. I'm ready for this. But, you know, I've learned in my journey, Mahmoud, is whenever you think you're at the top, and it's not in maybe in how you act and how you speak, but internally your ego, once you feel like superior in any way, what I've learned, and this is very recent over the last couple of years, life has a great way of coming like ta and slapping the shit out of you to humble you down in the best possible way. But that humbling is a very tough process, or it's a tough pill to swallow, to be like, yeah, I need to change. Yeah.
This is life. Life is learning, and I think it's about learning you more than others. So there's a big part of it. We spend a long time, big part of our lives trying to understand ourselves. I think, you know, if I could go on back to my younger self, I'll tell myself, I always was analyzing logically everything around me. I think with time, I realize now that I should also analyze myself. I've been doing more of it recently, but I mean, in my earlier years, it was just high extroversion in a sense.
Yeah, you kind of run on autopilot. You don't really know yourself. I don't know. I love that you said that, because knowing myself was something that even became like a possibility or a thing when I was like 27, when I discovered like mental health and like, oh, there could be things wrong with me, and this is from 30 years ago, whatever. I had no idea.
Yeah.
But now I think the younger generation are growing up with that knowledge, so we can, you know, fingers crossed, hope that would, I guess, set you up better. Doesn't mean guaranteed success, but set you up better.
Exactly. You know, for me, in my case, I knew from school I can sell stuff. You know, at the age of, so I told you at 13, I worked in my dad's company. At the age of 14, my father says, let's all move to the States, Texas, Dallas, Fort Worth, which is, I spent a year in the US.
No way.
Yeah, I went to school there. And I remember one day my neighbor, this kid comes to me and he says, Travis, he was a troublemaker. He says, there's a garage sale, let's go there, we can make some money. So I said, all right. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I have nothing to sell. I'll just take whatever's at home, my brother's old stuff, my old stuff, and show up there. So I take everything the next day in the morning. I show up with him, and me and Travis are standing there trying to sell I don't know what. And I kept thinking to myself, like, this is so stupid. This is such a crazy idea. No one's going to buy anything from me. And while I stood there, this old guy comes and he starts talking to me. And he says, in the middle of the conversation, how much for that? So I give it to him, and that was the first sale I ever made. And it came to me, you know, I understood that for me, selling came more naturally than building. So I knew where I was, at least on those two. And I think that's you know, you kind of know where you are, and then you build on that. You know, you become, you know, I think that's the first thing to know about yourself.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great point, because piggybacking on what you said. So I started like you, engineering, and then we switched like many others. I did a double major in finance and economics. Now, when I graduated, I was looking for, obviously, finance and economics jobs, because naturally, I'm like, okay, this is what I studied, therefore I should go work in what I studied, right? That's the natural progression. And I would apply and whatever, and it wasn't working out. And my friends who were in finance ahead of me at the time, they're like, Khalid, we know you. You are not a finance person.
No.
You're like, you can't just sit behind a desk on an Excel sheet and like just put a number. It's not you. But I didn't believe them. I didn't listen. I kept trying. And I always, in the back of my head, for no reason, by the way, purely no reason, I'm a people person. I like talking to people. I'm like, I think I'd be good at sales. I think. And then the first job I ever got was a sales job.
What was it?
I was selling. So I joined Cisco in 2017, and I joined their sales program. So you work for 6 months, and then you train for 6 months, and this was all in Amsterdam, and then you come back.
Nice.
So I ended up living in Amsterdam for 3 years because I left Cisco after that, and I went and worked with some other companies. So for 3 years, I was just the guy. You probably had this experience too with the call centers. Pick up the phone. Hi, this is Khalid. Go fuck yourself. All right, thank you. Okay. And you build like a bit of you become immune. You just and you just pick it up again like nothing.
That first time that someone hangs up the phone in your face, I remember I worked in Showtime one of the summers, and this guy, he picked up the phone. I was calling Saudi and old customers of this company and trying to get them to upsell. And soon I learned about upselling. So I'd call someone and be energetic, and this other person on the other side, I remember he was ruthless. He said, your company's X, you are X, don't call my number again. And he hung up in my face. And for me at that second, I remember I put the phone down, I went downstairs. It was
Heavy.
big. Yeah. It was heavy. I felt really bad. I remember telling myself, never again, never again. But that summer was maybe I did 1,000 calls.
That'll do it.
Yeah,
that'll do it.
That'll do it. It'll humble you to a way that you'll know the default is rejection.
Exactly.
Expect nothing.
Exactly. But what I've realized, Mahmoud, so I did that for 3 years, and then I ended up doing the podcast, and now my podcasting business as well. I've realized through the last 2 years of building the business is, particularly with sales, I feel like there's you have a natural maybe inclination to be a good salesperson. Like you felt like sales feels good to me. It feels like I can be successful here. But I feel like sales is a skill that you have to always be working on, because so for 3 years I was in, and then I wasn't to that level, and I was doing different types of sales. Now I'm selling my own business. It's not cold calling. It's very different. But what I've had to, as time has gone on through this business journey, of relearning how the sales mindset, how you call, how you it's a muscle that I think you always need to train. Have you found that experience too, or do you feel like you've hit enough of a base that I don't need to
I think we as humans, we love to hear nice words and stuff, but for me, I think at one point I was working at this bank, a huge bank in Dubai. I don't want to say the names. And the bank was trying to get in touch with a customer. So the head of the department, he was the head of the corporate bank. This is a huge position with hundreds of employees reporting to him. He comes, I get a message saying, the head of the corporate bank tried to reach this customer. He's an Emirati. He has a PA who has a master's, English PA. Get in touch with him and get a meeting with him. And for me, I felt proud and at the same time frustrated that it's such a high bar. And that's when I remembered that sales, not necessarily very hard. It's about connecting with humans. So I pick up the phone, and me being at the time 10 years in banking, this was the last year I stayed in banking. I had maximum, in terms of experience. I pick up the phone, I call this woman, and the first thing I hear in her tone, she says, I'm the PA of so-and-so, and I'm so-and-so. And, a very nice pause for me and appreciation for her. And I said, I've just joined this bank. I'm an intern. I need to learn from you. I need to meet you. I have a target to meet interesting people. I want to meet you, and I have something to give you. It's an invitation from our bank's main corporate banking head who wants to meet your boss. And she was so excited that I said I wanted to learn first. She said, you said you were in which department? I said, the corporate bank. She said, you're a UAE national that wants to learn from me? I said, absolutely, I want to learn from you. I would love to learn from you. I said, let me come meet you and give you this card by myself. We have a driver, but I will come by myself. She said, no, I will send my driver. I'll arrange the meeting for you. She was super happy to help. So emotionally, you need to connect with someone. Yeah. Forget about everything you read online about, I think, this, I think there's a lot I learned from Jordan Belfort has a very interesting book, The Way of the Wolf. Mm-hmm. They made a movie about him too, and this is back in the day. And he spoke about when someone buys, they look at three things. They buy a product, they buy a person, and they buy a company. So if you're failing on any one of them, you need to re-see yourself. But I would say the thing you can control is you. So in that you part, if you can connect emotionally, I'm not saying, make something up. What I'm saying is that person over there that you're talking to is a human. It's still not AI, it's a human. If you can connect through a message, through a video, through, you can say your message, you can show them that there's value for them. Just like any two human beings that meet each other. If you can polish that skill, be around people that you find are good salesmen, or sell, or are achieving good in their life. Because usually someone that can sell something can sell themselves as well. So I don't want to get too philosophical here, but the learning is, I think, to a high extent, it's a human game. You connect, you can do, the sale will come naturally.
Yeah.
People want to help others.
Exactly. And I think that's this is the point that people miss. Like the point you just said was the thing that I forgot about. When I was saying, I felt like I had to relearn that. I forgot about the connection part. And I was, in a lot of my messaging and whatever, it was always about what I can do for you. Come work with me. I will take care of your whole podcast, whatever, you sit back, whatever. And
You're thinking logically.
Thank you. And I have an executive coach that, I work with. And he sat me down. I was like telling him, like, give me your sales page, whatever. And he's like, I still gave him the whole spiel. And he's like, okay, like, so what?
Yeah.
Like, so, and when he said, so what? I was like, excuse me? Like, what do you mean, so what? I just gave you all this. He's like, yeah, but you've told me what you can do for me. You haven't sold me on what's that going to give me.
Yeah.
I don't care if you hang from the ceiling, you work upside down to deliver what you need to deliver for me. I just care about getting that delivered. And again, it's so small, such a small shift, but it changes everything.
I was a branch manager in Dubai of a bank. So there was 10 years of banking I did. 3 of them were retail, 7 were corporate. In the retail bank, I was the branch manager of a huge branch, maybe the biggest branch on Jumeirah Beach Road. And I got this branch. And the challenge when you work there is you always think, how am I going to book this high net worth individual? How am I going to sell to them when all of Jumeirah Beach Road is banks? He can walk in the morning, he wakes up and go have coffee wherever he wants in these banks and put his money, take a loan, whatever he needs. And I was thinking about attracting the person. So while I was sitting on my desk, I always thought, should I bring it up now and try and sell or no? And every time I told myself no, be more interested in the guy's topic. So if someone was sitting with me and he would talk about stocks, a businessman, I would research, and then the next day he would come, or the day after, and then they would become my friend because now I'm talking to them about the thing they want. And as time went, I realized that those relationships I've built, they voluntarily moved their existing banking relationships to me. And that's because everything is based on relationship.
100%.
They know why I'm sitting there. It's not, and they're not sitting there just for the free coffee. They're sitting there for the human relationship. They can go to any bank on Jumeirah Beach Road with money, and you sit in a nice office with a branch manager and you have a coffee on the house. But it's the human relationship part that gets people to want to help you. Especially if you're a rich and influential person. You don't like someone to tell you what to do.
Yeah, I'm the one who tells. Now I'm the one who tells. People told me for a long time. Now I have the luxury of telling you what to do. So I want to just, so we kind of touched on the banking aspect, which I want to dive a little bit deeper into. But before you even got into banking, I want to take you back a step. So I know your father, Allah yarhamu, passed away in 2010. And he had one of the largest construction companies, or contracting at the time, and you guys were 5,000 employees. And then from 2008 to 2010, you had to everything had to be reduced, whatever. And then Allah yarhamu, when he passed away, your family was like, all right, Mahmoud, you're the finance guy, you figure it out. So, you did things like, restructuring the debts, changing the business activity, reducing the number of employees. Now, I'm curious because, as you know, you built a business and sold it and whatever. Entrepreneurship's a very tough journey. I feel like, if I'm looking outside, I'm like, that experience in such a tough time personally and such a tough time in the business, for you to take on that responsibility and manage that and figure it out, set you up for everything else.
Thank you for bringing it up. It's an emotional time in my life, as you can imagine. I grew up with my father, and he was very close to me. And in the sense, I spent time with him every summer. I worked in his company. Not so much time with him, but I looked up to him a lot. Let's just say I respected him a lot. And when a boy respects his father, he wants to be exactly like him.
100%.
And then you see, so this is 2010, 2 years after the crisis. 2008 was a bad time. 2010, my father passes away. And this has been 2 years of the company accumulating debt with no projects because the employees were paid. And what was left from 5,000 at the time was about 500. So I get, my brothers to say, run it. And first, I get there and I remember you feel almost you have this company to solve logically, but then you have the emotional feeling more important of, your father leaving and passing away. And now you need to be responsible also for your family. I wasn't necessarily the oldest. I have a couple of brothers and sisters older than me, but I think, when the opportunity came, I saw it more that I needed to help more than take. And I thought this was, in the end of the day, there was things I could do for myself and there was things I could do also for my family. And I put this in the bucket of helping my family. And, from a troubleshoot, there was 3 things I did. Number 1 was restructure the debt, like you said, and then, reduce 500 people to about 75 people in the span of 9 months. And then after that, I also spent time with the government to change our business activity to allow us to, sublease. And that kind of, put my family trajectory there. But then I thought again back to myself and I thought, what do I really want? And it came to me that this restructure plan, everything was set for the next 10 years. But there was still human relationship that I was craving that was still in the banking system. And why I always wanted to work in the corporate bank, in any bank I went to, was because I always wanted to meet people that I thought were like my father. I love to hear business stories. And usually when you sit with an old man with a lot of experience, doesn't necessarily have to be rich, but rich with experience, they usually tell you the best stories. And I like to hear stories. And if it's a success story and these are, you're in the biggest bank with the biggest customers, you realize that these stories are the real ones.
Yeah.
They can't, this guy can't be making it up. And then when you hear it, it almost comes to you like a shock. And that's when you realize that the person that you feel is so far away is actually so much closer to you. And their stories are so real. Because when you realize that that big person that did so much actually has a normal story, they failed at some point, they also went through hardship, then you realize that there is no free lunch and you start working harder on your own purpose. And that to me is, I think solving different problems always allowed me to meet better people. I also, like you, I'm a people's person. I like to meet people, but by choice. I don't like to be forced into.
Exactly. Very good point. Very good point. Which is, as we were talking, earlier on the phone, which is why, I think we both do our podcast for that reason, so we can handpick the people we want to speak to, and sit down with. So you restructured the business, you figured that out, and this was how far into your banking journey were you at that point?
Exactly. So I did this for a year, for 1 year, and then my brother, I put him, we created the board. I put my brother as CEO. We agreed for him to manage, and the KPIs were kind of set. Yes, there were ups and downs, but we kind of, I'm a strategy guy, and a bit of sales, but deep down, all the games I played, World of Warcraft.
Yes, sir.
Everything I like is a strategy game. So
yes, sir. 100%.
Back to strategy, I wanted to go to the bank and be the highest paid employee in terms of salary with my friends. It was always a challenge I had and my friends had with me, and we would joke with each other, and make fun of each other, like, oh, my salary went higher than yours, mine's 1,000 more. We were a group and we all joined different banks at the same time, different universities, but you kind of gel with your own.
For sure.
And we went through different things together. At the time, I wanted to go back, so I went back to banking. And I said, let me join the bank, do the things I wanted to do, meet those interesting people. There was a lot that was still, when you're done with something, and I was still just at the beginning.
Yeah. So it's interesting. You restructured the business. You go back into the banking world because that is where you wanted to be. You had an idea of the kind of vision you wanted for your career and so on. And then after, I think you said 10 years, 2016, you decide, done. I'm done with this. And when I was listening to your story, what was interesting, I love things that happen by accident. Like, you always wanted to be an entrepreneur. It was funny that you said, like, your dad back in the day would like rent mountains, blow them up, and then bring stuff back. I'm like, if blowing up shit is not entrepreneurial, I really don't know what is. So big shout out to your dad, Allah yarhamu. And what in your story is you always wanted to do something, but you didn't know what, and you were looking for healthy food at the time. You couldn't find a place that had good healthy food, that had good branding, that was not pre-cooked like 2 months ago and like not fresh to order, like all these things. And then you decide to go down this path. So could you just tell us, like, with under 500, because when I was listening to your story, I'm like, your timing was interesting too, because I think your timing was great, because that was the beginning, I'd say 10 years ago now, almost 10 years ago now, of when all of this new health food space and like meal programs and started picking up in Dubai. So could you just give us a quick, just that experience and like how it was for you?
Horrible when it started. I remember we had all the food. This was the first food tasting. This was in my house because we didn't have a restaurant yet. Me and my business partner got all our friends over and we sat down and we put it on the ground. We had this, usually when we sit, we like to sit on the ground and eat. So we put a big tray. I invited all my friends. He invited all of his friends. And they all sat down and we put this little piece of paper we thought was a smart idea. And we put, how much would you pay? What would you call this? Blah, blah, blah. And we put all these dishes. And one after the other, every time someone ate something, I would see their face look worse and worse, worse and worse. And the feeling inside me, it was like my heart was getting crushed.
Hard. With food specifically, by the way.
And we left. It was a disaster. I remember we looking at each other saying, is this it? Like all this hard work that we put in, are we just going to leave it here? And then we realized something. The food tasting that we did was actually with a group of people that never went to the gym. So we decided to call all the personal trainers we knew and offer them this food, and the reviews were amazing.
There you go.
So it's very important who you test with, your product. Super important. It can take a failure. You can decide that, because then we got new data from personal trainers saying they loved it. We were like, wow, this thing then has to work. We found we found people that, because, some of my friends, they said I was crazy. I wanted to do a healthy food brand. They said, who puts a number and a name under 500? No one would get it. But that personal trainer gets it because he's a healthy food person. The minute he counts calories all day. So we started, with a lot of challenges. No one wanted to give us a place. When you start a brand, the first question when you go to rent a place, for anyone here, a physical location, people want to ask you, where's your existing shop?
Oh.
And if you don't have an existing shop, it's just still an idea. No one wants you to take a main, so no one wants, if you were the owner of a Dubai mall, for example, you can't blame him of saying no. You can't blame him for saying no to 2 kids that came up with an idea and they haven't executed it anywhere else. The default should be no. So what happens in 2015, we get our first shop in the back of a building. And, we're back to base, me and my co-founder. Who's going to order from us? Again, we're stuck with the problem where we have a shop, but there's no, there's sand. We opened one in Business Bay and one in JLT, and we put everything we had into it. Him and I, we had no money left. We'd borrowed from everyone we knew as well. So we get into it, and his shop is we were thinking about who has the worst shop. Who's we discussed internally that one of us would manage each one, would pay more attention to a certain shop. So we both realized that, our shop was in a really bad location. But when you see that you have something negative and you realize that because your shop's in a bad location, you have really good rent, which means you can do deliveries. So we start focusing on deliveries. And what happened to happen, so when you position yourself also, sometimes luck comes to you and you attract your luck. At the time, they had this concept of Deliveroo and Zomato and Uber Eats came out. So we were one of the first healthy food brands on these platforms. And because our locations were bad, at the same time, we had time to focus on delivery and not really on dine-in. So, that journey of starting in a bad location, starting with no one liking your food because you don't realize how to sell it, all can turn into pluses, and you can create a brand that one day goes to 6 countries and touches so many people's lives that a unicorn wants to buy your brand. So that's kind of the journey I went through, but it was all with these obstacles and stuff that takes me always back to that motorbike story, the one I never got. But everyone has that motorbike, that first customer, that first investor that they want. And you need to keep, it's a daily thing. It's not, that thing of grit is not something that you just going to get it and someone will say that you got it because you're lucky. I think, a lot of people that are now in the middle of something, especially me, I get it every day, every time I want to go. For example, now today, if I want to go to the gym, the first thing I think about is tomorrow.
yeah. Very true.
Everyone still does.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's interesting that you said, I love that you shared that story that it was a disaster at the beginning, because again, this is the problem. People think like they only see Mahmoud at the finish line. They didn't see him when it started, and that question. And something you said, which is so important, because this year I've spoken to a lot of entrepreneurs on the podcast. And what you talk about, which is, and this is the part that all of us miss typically, is number one, the MVP, coming up with that. And number two, more importantly, is before I even make an MVP, research. And I'll put and I've said this on the podcast before, and I'll say it again, I'll put my hand up, guys. This research process, I've had to do like in the last year, because I fell into this by accident. 1 became 2 and became 3 and whatever. So you just run, but then you get to a point that doesn't become 4, 5, 6. Then you have to think about, but I want 4, 5, 6. What do I need to do to get 4, 5, 6?
Exactly.
Oh, I need to speak to people. I need to learn. What you did though, which I really respected, is before you even started with Under 500, you went with German Donor for a year to learn how to franchise.
I actually went into Subway.
I
actually went to learn about franchise. I actually went to set up the healthy food brand, and I didn't know how to do it. So as a noob, I went to Subway and said, "Can I franchise your location for a year, run it, and that would give me, the experience without burning all my money?" And they said no. So I had to go to a non-healthy food brand. I remember thinking to myself, this is the dumbest idea ever. I'm starting with a non-healthy food brand because there's not enough healthy food brands. And is anyone even going to want this? All the data said, that there was growth in health. I was someone that was looking for healthy food. I attracted a co-founder that wanted to, at the time he wasn't with me, but there was a lot of people that I knew that wanted healthy food. It wasn't that, it's just there were not enough, and you doubt yourself. So for me, I was on the, I had no option to franchise the German Donor Kebab for a year, gave it back at break even, and that's when I realized that was actually a stepping stone for me to create my own brand. Because without that experience, there's no way I would have learned,
exactly
what it is to be in a kitchen. How do you work with a supplier? I was a banker, yes, but I didn't have any experience in launching a restaurant. It was, it was a complete fluke, in the sense that, I got rejected, and then I didn't, that rejection led to me, it's just one more step.
Yeah.
And without it, I would have had to learn it somewhere. You're not going to learn in a book, what to do when, there's a lot of things emotionally you don't learn in the book. You learn the logical stuff, but the emotional stuff, if someone steals in your restaurant, what are you supposed to do? If there's that little experience, and the learning curve is really high in the first 6 months to a year. So I would say, always, don't look at rejection as for me, when I look back, at the time you don't want to do and continue, but when you look back, you realize every rejection is just one more, the universe, God. I believe in Islam and Allah, and we believe in fate. So there is a part of the journey that, alhamdulillah, we believe that God also has a plan for us. It's not just random luck.
Yeah.
So I'm a firm believer that it is also what you strive for, and there's also a part of it that's written down for you. So don't look at everything so bad.
No, I love that message, man, because I think a lot of times we will look at rejection as that wall. And beyond this wall, there's nothing. If I can't go through this wall, that's it, But like you said, it's just a little nudge, to the left. No, go this way instead. We don't need you to be here.
Yeah.
Now, talking on the franchising thing, because I haven't had the pleasure of speaking about franchising on the podcast before. So, and we are in, I think, the food it has become the food capital of the world. I'm sure people in other parts of the world are gonna give me shit for this, but come and I'll prove you wrong. It's like food is massive here, and there's thousands and thousands of restaurants opening up left, right, and center, from fine dining to the mid-market to the lower, whatever. Could you walk me through, like, if I came to you, I'm like, Mahmoud, I want to franchise this company. I want to franchise this food brand. Like, what do I need to know? Like, what do I need to know before I even, get started? Because a lot, like, the way you become a franchisee is you speak, from my knowledge, you can tell me otherwise. So let's say you have the brand, you're under 500. I came to you, I'm like, Mahmoud, I want to franchise under 500. What are the kind of questions you're going to be asking me? What kind of cost do I need to keep in mind? Because I think this is a bit of unless you're in it, it's a bit of a black box until you've had that experience.
Right, exactly. Look, first of all, I want to say, we have the most amount of restaurants in the UAE per capita in the world. So we're more than Manhattan, we're more than anyone.
Insane.
So if you thinking about doing food, it's super competitive. But in terms of, if you're a consumer, you have a lot of options. You're almost spoiled for options. So Dubai is, the best delivery, the best service, the best food. I don't only say it because I'm from Dubai, but I competed in it, and I know it's challenging, but it's rewarding at the same time. So you touch a lot of people with your brand, because there's so many people that order on delivery as well. So I'm definitely with that point. Your question was on? Franchising. Okay. So look, I'm going to talk to you like a banker.
Yeah.
The problem with every entrepreneur is they don't think about capital from the beginning. And I think if you think about capital, which is not a very cool topic to discuss, but it'll save you a lot of trouble down the line. So what I mean by this is, for me, I started off thinking, okay, I have my savings. I've been working at the bank. This is now 2020, let's say, no, we weren't in 20. Let's say I was about 30 years old. I have some savings. How do I make my money? How do I put my money in a project that makes money for me? And I remember thinking, fine, I'll do this for a while, but the restaurant needs to have a financial plan. And how will I bring more money into my project? So for every person that starts a business, they realize that there's a limit on capital. If you're in Dubai and you're trying to take a loan from a bank, if you haven't done 3 years, you're not going to get bank funding. So you're limited by capital, there's no bank funding. These are the two things that you know for sure. But then you think about, what is a model that I can use to allow capital to come into my company to further my growth? And in the restaurant business, you don't really raise capital like a traditional VC. You raise money in a different way.
Oh, okay.
So franchising is a nice way to raise money. And we thought, okay, this was what we did in the beginning. We always had the idea to franchise, me and my co-founder. We thought, if this is going to be big, so this has to be, if we're going to do something together, it has to be big. So the first thing is, it needs to double up year on year. Crazy target. Second thing, it needs to go to the GCC. And we knew nothing about franchising. We just knew that this is the way we're going to bring different pockets of capital in and show them how to run a successful restaurant. Now, this sounds like a crazy idea in the beginning. But what we did is we actually ran the first shop ourselves and found the franchisee to take it as a running operation. And that's where we kind of nailed it. Okay. Because it's very hard to franchise something as an idea that, like, if nobody will take a franchise from you unless you have a huge network of like 20 plus shops and everyone's offering franchises. So you think about, what is the best thing you can offer an investor? What if you created the shop and gave him the actual numbers and a running shop, and he becomes the franchisee, and you take your capital out and you maybe do another shop? Or you do what we did. We took that money out from our first shop and we bought the trademark for 80 countries and we bought a franchising manual.
Oh.
The manual is, we worked with the best company in the world. We put all our money into it. And this company's job gave us basically a master's degree in 9 months. They made us sit down. They taught us everything there is about franchising. They gave us the contract. So the contracts, the financial plan, how do you sell to a franchisee, the marketing plan that we give them, and also how do you make SOPs. So we moved then from operator to like master franchiser, basically. And that's how we kind of gamed the system by having more and more units. I think, our growth came because we thought, that we heard about something and we weren't afraid to try. And sometimes we got burnt, but if I look back, from 20 things, 18 meetings we did with random people burnt our time. But the two things that worked The franchising, the working with dark kitchens are things that worked for us. We sponsored many things that didn't work. We worked with many people that didn't work. This is the nature of the beast. You're not gonna. Nobody has. Either your batting ratio is never gonna be. But if you try enough, right, you can't reject people that you don't know. What if you meet them? What if they have an idea? What if it's a crazy idea? What if you work together on the idea, make it a reality? And you're not going to be able to attract that luck if you're not opening yourselves to opportunity. Coming on the days that you don't really want to show up. And I have a lot of those.
Yeah, who doesn't, man? 100%.
Where you feel life just got you in the corner.
Yeah, just kicking your ass.
Life is telling you today is not for you. Tomorrow maybe.
But today, and those days, when you have those days, everything just goes wrong. You just put my hands up. I'm like, all right, it's not my day. Just not my day. Tomorrow we'll wake up, we'll be fresh, we'll have another chance. It's interesting how you guys game the system, the approach you took when it came to franchising, because, and you've been in this industry and you have this experience. So I'm speaking as a outsider because I want an expert's perspective.
Sure.
So I have friends in the restaurant industry and they have their own places and whatever, and mashallah, they're doing great.
Mashallah.
And they're all some of the places have been open for maybe less than 2 years, and they're already expand. And I'm I don't know, everyone's going to I think everyone will give us a different answer to this. But from my perspective, I'm what I've learned listening and speaking to entrepreneurs is focus, become the best at whatever you're doing. Make sure this thing is not good, this was a good year. This is cross the I, dot the T. This is pristine running. It's a pristine running business. So I'm to expand without giving this the more time. I see it personally. I see it as something I wouldn't do, because also with expansion, people hear all these nice things yes, we expanded to 10 countries, whatever. I'm okay, yes, you did, mashallah. What cost came with that? Hiring people, maintaining the quality, and this is what frustrates the shit out of me when I see when I see this business raised $10 million. Amazing. But what responsibility that comes with, the targets they have to hit, and it's not guaranteed that it will work, but everyone likes to look at the good news, without taking into account, yes, this is good news, but there's a cost that's coming to do that. So what's your perspective?
Yeah, there was a lot of days I sit with my co-founder and we say, that little money in the account, do we take it today? And this was actually in our head office. A few years before our exit, we had just a little bit of money someone gave us that was there, a franchisee. Should we take it? Should we withdraw it? And no matter what we looked at, the answer was always reinvest it in one of the 10 ideas that we had waiting. And when you come to invest in the extra ideas, you're always looking for that 1 out of 10. But the truth is, what you have existing, if you can go and nail down, if am I a food brand, am I delivery or am I dine-in? All right, let me focus on delivery. That's my edge. All right, so if I'm delivery, should my menu be 50 items or 30 items? If you deliver 30 well, cancel 20. So I'm a delivery brand that's healthy, that does 30 items. Can I do more brands? Why not? So then we unlocked other brands on the delivery platforms. So we'll go into that later, but at this point, it's about franchising your know-how. And your know-how can be, how do you set up a healthy food brand? How do you do deliveries from that brand? How do you make money while owning the employees? And a lot of people want a stable business where they make their money, for example, as a franchisee, which is where I initially started my journey. A lot of people want that feeling of comfort without the feeling of failure. Franchising is for someone that can arrange visas, wants to do a bit of marketing, but wants know-how on the brand, on the financials, wants that he thinks his area that he knows people in, or the spot he has as a location, would actually work for the person for a certain concept. So someone could be in a university campus and say, hey, this brand would look really good here because these students would eat from there. So franchising, in the end of the day, is just, do you want to create your own brand or take someone else's? Today it's a little outdated. You can get any kind of franchise manual. There's everything available online to learn from. I think it's more about building trust with investors, understanding how to I wouldn't say I wouldn't say anything except if you're thinking that your first investor is like someone that's going to come from nowhere. No, your first investor is probably one of your customers. And that's something I learned also. You know, if they're not a product user of your, or don't even love your product, it's very low chance they're going to invest in you. So focus on your product and who you are as a person. Can you build trust with people? If not, is your team, is there someone there? You know, are you part of a credible network? You know, can you make your customers happy? And from your customers, you wouldn't believe how many people I met that actually got their first investors from their who are their customers.
But you know, it's funny, until you said that, like it's I'm like, of course, like that makes, when you said it, I'm like, of course, that makes so much sense as the first place to look, because they already bought into your product, so they're like, oh, that'll be your first place to look, if anything. You know,
it's like, you now, if you're talking to someone and they say, oh yeah, I watch your podcast, you're already like 10 steps ahead. You know, they already know who you are, they know your product, they know what you're doing. That's so different than you talking to someone they still, you know, and then you want them to become an investor also. Like, that's a, you know.
Yeah, it's a big jump.
It's a big jump.
It's a lot of convincing, a lot of, you know, it's much easier to go with the other route. When it comes to the franchising thing, you were talking about how, you know, expanding, and, you know, you want to do that, and reinvesting money, and like, how do you do that? I don't know. So let's say I'm the franchisor. I'm under 500, and I now have franchisees. Okay. So for you to franchise from me, think you pay me for a license. I'm gonna give you all the SOPs, how we run, the branding, how you, like, everything you need to run this business.
Right.
At the end, and I'm getting a fee for that, regardless.
You get a down payment,
and then
you get a
percentage of sales.
Yeah.
So, as the franchisor, if I'm already getting that, like, I got the down payment, I'm getting my cut. I can imagine if I'm in that position, I'm gonna be like, yeah, I have money coming in anyway, so why do I care how well you do? Do you get what I'm saying? Because I'm taking a percentage of whatever revenue you make anyway. So I'm like, okay, maybe I made a bit less now, maybe a bit more. So I'm not really gonna be. It's not the same as being like, every store needs to hit like this target and that target, and if you don't, there will be someone else. Or maybe I'm wrong, by the way. I don't know. I'm just speaking from outside perspective.
You know, you got to think about it this way. You got to be able to control things, and it's about control. If you own other parts of the supply chain, you can also control. So this is, you know, one of the things that maybe that's, you know, outside of the box, in the sense, if you supply to them in your franchising contract, you might have a deal where you supply to them. They only buy your products. Many brands like McDonald's, they protect their product by saying, okay, you franchise, we own the land or whatever, but apart from that, you have to buy the fries from us, you have to buy the burger from us, the patty from us, all those things. And putting those things in place makes you not only more money as a franchisor, but it also ensures that your franchisee doesn't mess up. So what we would do is, when we went to different countries, we would have a central kitchen. And the central kitchen, say the process is 100, you need, for example, 15 steps to do a burger, an under 500 burger. What we would do is break it down in our central kitchen to 3 steps, put it in 3 packets with little instructions that a dummy could pick it up. Plus he had a video. This is before there was Zoom so popular. We would have our own little videos where that person could watch it, and they would learn as a noob. Because a lot of these franchising branches and kitchens that we went to, you know, people are from different nationalities, different languages. So it needed to be video.
Yeah.
Of someone doing the thing. How do you open those 3 packets, put it together? And for us, it was super important to control also the preparation time. So if you can control your preparation time, that will lower the amount that you need to pay the Deliveroo's to come up.
True.
Because being up there is a factor of 2 things. How far the motorbike is from you, and number 2, how much time it takes to prepare that meal. So again, going back to that central kitchen, you are investing and reducing the time it takes for that nice hot food to reach your customer. And if you put your customer first, they always tend to pay you more. That's something realized as well. You can ask people for more money when you give them a good solution.
That's true. That's true, yeah. Like, if you're happy, unless it's something like ridiculous, yes, of course, they'll be more inclined to, even in my business, I'm sure you had it in your experience, like, what I charged in like my first year was one thing, but then when I came to same clients in year 2, it was a very different price, but they still went with me because we've proven, I have the track record to prove like you can deliver and do all these things. So I want to round off the food part of the conversation because we're going to jump back into entrepreneurship in a sec. The reason I wanted to talk about food is because you've been in that world and I'm a food guy. I love food. You hear it here. One day I will have my own restaurant. I fucking promise. I just love cooking. I love food. I love trying food. I love everything. Dubai, as you said, has the most restaurants per capita globally. So if I came to you and I'm like, okay, Mahmoud, I want to launch a new food concept in Dubai. I know is it going to be fine dining? Is it going to be this? And you're going to ask me a million questions. But I guess my question is, what is the key, like, what's the main point of differentiation, you need? Because in terms of quality, everyone has good ingredients. In terms of taste, the standard here is exceptional. 99% of the places will also deliver to you. So, like, the areas to compete are very difficult. You know what I'm saying? Because there's in each category, each one of those, the competition is insane. So what advice would you have to me on how do I make a food brand stand out in such a competitive market? Because you see left and right, a restaurant opens tomorrow, next year it's gone. 6 months it's gone, 2 years it's gone. There's very few that are here for the long haul.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. How do you build something that lasts? And I think it's by having strong foundations to begin with. So you can get a strong foundation by not going blind. What I mean by saying that is, we're in 2025 today. If I was to start a healthy food brand, first thing I would do is go to the person in the area I want to open. If there's a Deliveroo or Uber Eats or Zomato, any of these talabat, and ask them what is. I'd speak to like their business development manager and ask them how much what is doing really well in this area. Say I want to open in Motor City, for example. What is doing well? Let's say chicken works really well in Motor City. This chicken place with spicy is killing it. So now I have an idea. All right, is it delivery or dine-in? Pass by and see my competitor. What are they doing that's so good? Or what is their need for? And based on that data, I build, okay, is this on high growth or low growth? Like, is this a trendy thing? Where is a trendy brand in the world that looks similar and has a similar location to here? And I would sit and design backwards and say, my customer in this area likes so-and-so. The average selling price is so-and-so. The cost of the product would be so-and-so. And you can build it backwards and say, fine, if I get 5,000 sales a day with this brand, this would look like success. Did less, maybe wouldn't recover my capital. So I think people run into things, they always want to build something for them, 100% for them. It can be your idea. For example, with Under 500, my co-founder chose the name. He was a branding guy, very good with branding. I didn't get in his way. Even though the name had a number and all my friends said, you're crazy for putting money into something like this. But I was thinking, and for even thinking about doing a healthy food brand, they said I was crazy. But in the end of the day, it's not. If the data, you're a customer. So I knew as a customer, I got a gut feeling. But apart from it, all the data was showing growth. So if I was to open a restaurant today in a city that's super competitive, I would think about from the person that's selling it. Number one, I would get from them, what is the thing that's doing good in the area? And then number two, I would create signature stuff. Signature means risk. It means taking something that does good on Pinterest, trying it, doing a twist on it, and putting it out there. You can go with everything that's safe. Yeah, you can copy-paste your competitor, his signatures, but you'll never stand out. But the thing, out of your signatures, the few things, 2 or 1. So, I remember one day we were sitting down, it was about 2017. We had 3 locations in Dubai. My co-founder, between the both of us, he was better at branding and he was better at food tastings. So I would always go with his view, just because I like to give him autonomy and he gives me autonomy in the accounting. So I remember us sitting down and he was saying to me, Mahmoud, I got this on Pinterest. I'm going to give a chef in this location to do it, and I'm going to give another chef. I'm not going to give them the entire recipe. I'm going to tell them to create something that looks like this. And there was something called the chicken burrito bowl. And something about it spoke to him, and he said, I want to try this with both chefs. And I remember thinking to myself, like, is this one of those crazy times? Is this another fail in the book? It's one more fail. Fine, let's try it. Chicken burrito bowl, why not? Pay them their overtime or whatever they need to get it done, and let's put something behind it. I like that came from from something that he saw, and we went and he gave it to both of them, and one of them really messed it up big time. The other one came back with something interesting, and Fadi went and he did his cut here, add here stuff, and then the nutritionist looked at it, and we decided that this could be under 500 calories. The chicken burrito bowl that we launched in Dubai became the bestseller not just in Dubai, in Saudi, in Kuwait, in the UK, in the US, in Iraq, in every market that we went to. And the chicken burrito bowl, we never even shared the story. This is the first time I ever shared the story. And just it tells you that, if you're not going to try and get a signature, that's how we find our signatures.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
9 flopped. It's just this one that got on top of the charts everywhere.
Exactly.
That goes, imagine you're a musician. Imagine no one gets it the first time. No one. You'd be lucky not to learn the lesson on the 10th time. There's lessons in there. How are you going to get the lessons?
Exactly.
They're not all in the book.
Yeah, I love that you said that. So look, I love reading, as you can see.
Amazing.
But I echo everything you're saying, because I've read all these business books, whatever. I'm in this journey of entrepreneurship and building my business, and I'm going through experiences, and I'm like, the book gave me an idea about that, but this is there's deeper levels to this. How I'm feeling, how I'm thinking, but he told me this, and then you're telling me that. It's a whole khabsa, it's really hectic. But the example, I love the example you gave, because I used where my head went straight away was content. Everyone's like, I've been posting for 6 months and nothing's happening, whatever. I'm only getting this many views, whatever. And just like what you said with that burrito bowl, that one thing made up for the 10,000 fails before. And it's the same thing with content, same thing with everything. Mark Cuban has this famous saying, he's like, you only need to be right once. You know what I'm saying? So keep going, because you just need one. Once that one works, you'll be set. But getting that one... We
were so embarrassed to ever share this story. I think this is the first time I ever shared it.
Really? Why?
Yeah, because
it's a great story.
It would almost discredit him. Sorry, Fadi.
But all the credit now goes to you too, so it's both.
He's an absolute legend for deciding to do something out of the box. I think, it's that thinking, and then there's execution as well.
Yeah.
So, but you never ever in my wildest dreams imagine one thing would spark fire like that and go everywhere. So, like you said, with the other stuff as well, like Mark Cuban said, and people can engineer for virality, but you're never sure.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. You do the best you can. That's all you can do.
Even the best marketing agencies in the world, or anyone who's even Mr. Beast probably has flops that.
100%. Mr. Beast, I know he's scrapped $1 million videos that they've shot and done whatever because they couldn't get the right thumbnail. I'm saying, that's there's levels to that.
Perfection.
You strive for the best, and that's. But you have to also accept that you're not. It's 9 times out of 10 it won't be perfect.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
And that's the thing also, right? In the business books, they don't tell you that emotional journey you'll go through, which is filled with lessons. You can't think that, the only thing certain is death.
Yeah.
I think everything until that is learning for you to be a better person, for someone else. Sometimes the same situation happens to you again because you didn't learn the first time. And again, you're not willing to learn the lesson.
Mm-hmm.
You shouting in front of someone, or you doing something you shouldn't be doing, but you don't, until you get in trouble maybe with the authorities, and then you learn, okay, this was the lesson I should have. So I just think in terms of, you can read as much as you want, but those little things you should be trying, you should be failing.
Yeah.
I'm sure as a podcast host, you also reach out to people that don't write back to you.
Yeah, of course.
And if you're not aiming that high,
of course,
are you really doing your best?
Yeah, exactly. You know what I'm saying? You have to, I tell people all the time, podcasting I think is unique though, because podcasting is not it's not like sales in a way. What do I mean by that is, when I invite someone when I invited you on the podcast, okay, I've been invited on podcast myself. I'm gonna put myself in Mahmoud's mind or as in the guest mindset. What does this mean? Okay, this person likes my content. This person sees me as someone of value. This person wants to give me a platform to come share my story and help people. Yani, and I'm getting access to a brand new network and a brand new group of people and like all that kind of stuff. So it's yani, for you to say no. Okay, fine, you can say this. That's fine to say no, but it's almost too good of an offer to like turn down. Do you get what I'm saying? When it comes to sales, it's a little bit different because it's a clear, transactional thing. I want to give you this. You don't want it. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
I love this. Sorry, I love the story you said about doing that research and so on and going and asking these things, because this is the part, as I mentioned earlier in the conversation, that a lot of entrepreneurs miss. And I was speaking to someone on the podcast and I was like, why do so many miss it? Like, why is everyone forgetting this step before we start? And he said something that really like stuck with me. He's like, because we look at it as not part of the building process. Like research doesn't, naturally in most people's minds, research doesn't mean building. Research is just research, Google, ChatGPT, boring, right. Getting information.
It's like hiring. Before you hire someone, you don't want to do research. You don't want to get a recruiter. You want to hire your friend's friend. And then you want to wonder why it didn't work out.
Exactly.
You didn't put enough time.
Exactly. And I think when you reframe it as part of the building process, it comes with a different, you'll approach it differently, because it's like, oh, this is step one. Not like going out and building this thing. No, this is step one. Now, I feel nowadays, I'm okay in my journey. Like, it happened late. It happened when it happened. But now that I know this for other people, I feel like now, if you've listened to this conversation and you want to start something, and don't just listen to us. There are thousands of podcasts that will tell you the same thing. And now when you have you have the power of ChatGPT, and now the new thing that they released recently, which is deep research, which I've been living on. You literally have no excuse, because I can prompt it to such a level of detail. I could take a different business plan, like take this, go do all the research on the web and tell me where the ideas, where the problems. So I feel like now with tech and with AI, this research part before you start a business, I feel like you don't have an excuse anymore. Sorry.
I'm completely with you. I think it's not the research, and that's why I go back to, in my opinion, it's not even the books. It's that feeling, that the first time I did my call center job and the customer said no to me, that feeling of rejection, that feeling when I put a post and no one liked it, that's the feeling, that's something that you have to go through to learn from. And I think the longer it takes you, it's almost like you get chickenpox once in your life.
Yeah.
And you don't get it
analogy.
young.
Yeah,
it hits you late.
Yeah.
But it hits you. And, I'm only saying this because I never got chickenpox and I'm actually worried as well.
No way. Inshallah. You don't.
But you think about it. It's that business teacher that's watching this podcast. It's that business person that's watching it and saying, I know everything academically. And they don't want to get rejected. That's the thing that's not in the book, is how do I make that step and get rejected and get it over with and realize you're going to get slapped in the face all the time, always rejected. I remember the first time I got rejected, I was told no over and over and over. My first job, I was at the American University of Sharjah. I was, with all of these part-time jobs, I almost went to my first meeting in HR arrogant. And I didn't see it. And I sat with the person that was hiring me in HR, and something they felt about my energy, I don't remember the dialogue because this was a long time ago, and the person rejected me. And I remember sitting and feeling lower than all of my friends, but emotionally, I'm thinking, I have part-time experience with different places. My friends are no experience, accepted on the first interview. And, for 7 days, I guarantee you, the feeling just got worse and worse and worse and worse, until I thought there has to be something more I can do till I accept it, because that's it. And I asked one of my friends that already got in and didn't get rejected, can I have the email of the head of HR? And I wrote down to him a very shabby email that basically said, if you give me a chance to have one more interview, I will prove to you that I'll be the most loyal person that ever worked here. And somehow that emotion transferred through that shabby message to him. And I got another interview. And on my second interview, I was much more humble than I was the first time. And I would never know that maybe it was that, maybe it's something else I said. But from a logical point of view, I had everything. I knew all the things that were on the website. If I'm going into an interview, I'm trying to get, The emotional part was the learning, was that maybe you didn't act the part. Maybe you sounded, your vibration gave off that you knew it all. Maybe you thought entitled. And these are the learnings that you get over and over in your life, the slaps that you get. They tell you, humble, listen, speak next. And basic stuff that, the more you think that you're done with it, the more you realize the emotions will always be there. It's the number in the account that'll have an extra zero, but the real development's always on the person.
Yeah.
That's why when I see a company and I see, someone running it and they're not up to the part, I realize there's no way their company can be good. And before I even go to the numbers, sometimes as a banker, I would notice that the corporate culture always starts head to down, and if there's shaky at the top, Yeah.
No, it's so true, by the way. It's so true. Like, I know people who are running companies, and to give you credit, to go from zero to what you have now, well done, mashallah, you deserve a pat on the back. You're managing lots of people, like, great, and you have a good name in the industry, like, fantastic. But there's, just like what you said, there's levels to this game. I think the way you are was great from 0 to like 1. So go from 1 to now 10. You probably need someone else, someone more experienced, someone who's been there before, someone whatever, because this next jump is how you are as a person. It's not like, I don't think it's going to work out, but again, this is just my opinion. I could be completely wrong. So I resonate with what you're talking about a lot, and it's hard as a founder. You probably felt this too, like, this is my baby, like that emotional part. Like, everyone tells you, don't fall in love with your business. I'm like, great. But if this is the only thing I'm putting all my time and energy, this is how I'm making my money, this is how I'm providing for my family, whatever. Yeah, it's not that easy to just be like, to let it go, which kind of brings me on to your exit. Because, okay, lots of questions about this. So I've had people on the podcast that have told me different things. So I'm going to tell you those, and then I want to listen to your perspective. So you said, I know when the day after you sold it, you woke up the next day and you felt like you had like nothing, right? So number one, that's very interesting. Now, also, I've had people on the podcast who have made exits, and I used to ask them, like, how did you know? Like, why then? Why that number? And he said something to me. He's like, the question I really need to ask, that I was asking myself, is how greedy are you? That's a good question to ask yourself too. And number 3, this is the one that I think like really shocked me the most, is you said, think about your exit before you even start. Because you're the first person I've heard say that, because a lot of other people that I've spoken to are like, when you're starting a business, you cannot start thinking from exit and back. You have to put all your time and energy to make this a success and make it something that would even have the potential of exiting. So walk me through that whole exit thing, man, and your perspective, because it's a different take than what I'm used to hearing.
I was sitting in this unicorn's head office. I remember it was in the afternoon time. They had these long mirrors, and through it light would come in. Beautiful office. I remember thinking to myself, this is the moment. This is the time where I need to keep my calm. I need to not show my excitement. And I'm sitting there with my co-founder, my head of ops, and these Kitopi executives, and they're looking, and they say, your number here is good. You've expanded with us there. And at the time, this company had raised from SoftBank $200 million or so, Kitopi Kitchens. And they say, we like this brand. We want this brand. And I'm so excited there thinking, make sure your leg that you're tapping under the table, no one hears it. Yeah. Keep your poker face on, chill. Mm-mm. And I'm looking, thinking, this is the time. We're going to talk now. We're going to talk about someone buying my brand. And at that time, I remember the final thing I told myself is, this is the final point that I've been working for 3 years before, structuring every part of this company. We structured it, we built it. Nothing gets given for free. Even a discussion like this takes 3 years to sit and build the narrative for someone to invite you, and it almost seems like destiny is happening because you're in the conversation now. You brought it up, you led it in a natural way. And to me, that was the light bulb moment. I think many people get wrong. They think, oh, it's gonna happen. No, it's not just going to happen. You should realize that no one's gonna give you anything for free. You should put the extra step. You will get there. Takes me back again to that story of me trying to get the motorbike, not getting it, thinking this is the thing that you need to put one extra step, one extra way. That thing where you think that it's just going to happen, it doesn't happen just like that. And you have to be deliberate about the things you build. If you're building for someone to buy, Stephen Covey, we did a course actually with him. He said, start with the end in mind. He had the 7 habits for highly effective people. Stephen Covey, they got him once to our bank and they said, this guy will train you.
He's
guys.
a legend.
Yeah. And that start with the end in mind is actually what, I always was thinking, if I'm going to build something and I expect someone to buy me out, why am I building what I want? Yes, I want something healthy. I want something I can eat from, but do I really care about, if it's more on delivery or if the KPI is XYZ or we need to scale in different countries, which is what I wanted. You need to be stubborn on your vision, but you move around on the way to get there. Don't be, too fixated. Many people that started, Instagram itself started and went on a completely different tangent. So have that, vision that you want to be in a sector, you want to solve a problem, but don't be too fixated and fight with people. And that's the emotions, I think, they get the better of you and you think, this is my baby. And no, I saw many people, I saw in my life, many people, they went down because they didn't want to see it as a story that needs continuation. And when I say that, I say it relative to me. When I wanted to sell under 500 and my co-founder also finally, he agreed. The idea is, what is my story there? We did our part. There's also a part where that your value can be done somewhere else. It's not necessary that, you might feel after 8 years doing something that you're not growing enough. That could also be something, right? A reason where you want to do something else. So for me, I guess, that journey was a train for someone else to take. I got what I wanted from the story, in terms of, an exit. And I had been planning for it. We had been planning for it. I think these things don't happen overnight. So to answer your question, it's never going to be like that. Because let's just be realistic and talk about it from a completely tactical point of view. There's something called due diligence. How many years is due diligence?
I don't know, to be honest.
No one's going to come buy your company that you've been running for 8 years in one day.
Yeah.
A couple of years of working with you.
Show me the books, bro.
Why not work with your customer and let them buy you? That's also a way, right?
Great idea. Great point too. Very good point. Something you said there, and I think I misunderstood when you said think about your exit before you start. I took that as think about, how you where and how, but now listening to you explain it, it's thinking about how do I build this correctly for that outcome down the line. It's different. It's a different story. Yeah.
Yeah, but also the example I gave is a bit complicated. But say you're working in an office now doing a 9 to 5. Very, very, very normal idea that you get is, I want to do a business. How should you really be looking at a business? If you're going to look at it with the end in mind, you're sitting there, you're nervous. You're only nervous because you don't have the answer yet. And, you might be thinking, oh, this successful person, that successful person. No, think for yourself. I would say to myself, when I'm sitting there planning, I would say, okay, you want to build a healthy food brand? What should be the top line of the business? So say my salary is 15,000, okay, 20,000 dirham for sake of argument. If I want to get a salary of 20,000 dirhams, I need to build a business that gives me a top line of 2 million. And if I take 10% of that revenue, that's 200,000. And if I break down 200,000 a year into 12 months, then per month I will get X. And does X what do I need to get to point X where I can leave my full-time job and focus on my side hustle or my new business, my business. And I think that's the end in mind thinking, where you're starting with, okay, I need to get my salary to be comfortable or in the same place. Let's say that's the starting point. Now, if you do better, you're above. But if you start without the end in mind, then you don't even know what the yardstick is to quit the job and join. Some people make the mistake of quitting too early. I don't think anyone should start a side hustle. I don't think anyone should jump in with both feet. I think most people have a 9-to-5, and then they gradually, you scale out of your job when you realize your passion is taking over your time.
Yeah,
you're giving more value over there. And then you be fair with yourself and your employer.
Yeah,
you have that. Yeah,
it was interesting listening to I love the story of sitting in that chair and the lights coming in and going thank you for sharing the emotions you were feeling in that, because these are the things that people don't hear when we're having these kind of conversations. So it sounds like to me when you decided to exit, that you felt that chapter for what you have built, almost like, I think this is enough. Right, I think I can leave this mirtah. I can leave this comfortably. I know I built something amazing, and now I want to use everything, my knowledge, my expertise, and go down a new venture. So when it comes to, I guess, when it comes to someone exiting a company, because people discount if you don't take that exit and you want to build this another 2x, 3x, whatever. You have to also take into account the work and risk that you have to take on to hit that thing that you want. Because what if the business you have in 3 years, no one needs it anymore, or it's obsolete, or now there's a new technology that will do it for you. And then you're going to be thinking, fuck, I should have taken that exit. So that, I think that balance has to go on in your head, and to figure out where, because for example, Snapchat's a great example. They got, Facebook, Mark wanted to buy them for 1 billion. He said no, and now it's worth 19 billion, God knows what. If I was him though, when I hear that story, if I was him and you're offering me 1 billion, I'm taking 1 billion.
Yeah, but
do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, my point is about knowing if 1 billion is good or not from the get-go. If you set your company up and your middle ground, your salary or the other thing you were working on was going to get you 1 billion anyways, and you say the 1 billion is actually the low point or the middle point. So for you might actually say, no, I have my best case scenario in mind, because my data has changed. I have the best case scenario. I'm growing much faster than the offer you're giving me. So double up or go home. So all I'm saying is everything has a price.
Of course. Of course.
All the companies on the stock market that we see are 90% owned by 3 companies: Vanguard,
BlackRock.
Street. Exactly.
Yeah.
You said it.
Yeah.
So at some point, everyone gets diluted to infinity, right? So even the Facebook founder and the people that we're talking about, they are all yes, they might have vote and stuff, but the reality is I don't want to get political, but you know what I mean. It's not.
I get you.
You don't see all the hands on the table.
100%. That's very true.
Yeah, for me, I think you do need to scale yourself out. You're never going to be better. You're never going to be always one person.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
It's as simple as possible.
That's
even if you look like you're the tip of the iceberg, no. There's always someone. There's something behind. And it's not even it doesn't even need to be active, daily help. It's just that one advice from that person every once in a while that shifts you that way. Facebook, I was reading about their humble beginnings, and Bill Gates he bought at $265 million valuation, 1% or something. But look at that kind of a push in a startup. That's 1 in a million startups, right? That get that kind of a push. So you get that kind of a push, you get authority also, you get connection. And it's those things I think people need to focus on more than, you need to focus on how do you tell your problem to the person that means the most to, and how do you get them to see it as a logical solution for their pain. And I think that's something interesting about Facebook that people overlook, how they killed their competition. I think there's a lot of interesting stories in that company. But in the end, everyone gets scaled out. Yeah. It never becomes a startup with 2 people. It doesn't end up a startup with 2 people anymore. And you 100%. Gotta learn to upgrade yourself, or then you leave for
something else. Yeah, no. And you said I think this is an area that is not talked about enough. Coming because we're talking about like the entrepreneurship side, and like I love the examples you gave, because those are the things you're going to be thinking about. You know, those are the questions you're going to debate. What's relative to you? What makes sense to you might not make sense to me. Look at multiples. Is this a good offer? Like everyone has their own metrics for their life and their own scoreboard.
Sure.
This area though is an area I wanted to talk to you about, because this is, I think, the hardest area from an emotional perspective for an entrepreneur. So throughout your entrepreneurial journey, I know with you guys, for example, with Under 500, you were food. So there was a lot of free food tasting, right? Free food tasting to those, the friends, to the fitness people, to whether it's a discount here, an offer here. Like there's a lot of, you're not, I wouldn't say devaluing, but I'm giving you a lot at a much lower rate, right? Now, everyone knows that at the beginning, like when you're starting, you kind of have to do these things. You need to build that credibility. You need that market research. You need to kind of give, and be okay with like, yeah, that's going to cost this and that's going to cost that. Yeah. But as time goes on and you start having, like, for example, you guys started having success in the business and generating revenue, whatever, you stop doing that. Now, with you guys, I think it's a little like, I'm trying to compare, you guys have a product, right? And I'm looking at like service-based. You'll get to a point that you kind of are like, when do I stop this? What do I mean by that? When, like, from this day forward, I won't do something for free anymore. Although that free thing, I might get asked to meet people, like whatever, but it's a lot of my time, or like I won't compromise on my offer, no more discount. You know what I'm saying? Like, when, I guess for you, I don't know if this example applies to the business that you guys had, but even if it didn't, what point, I guess for you personally, did you feel like, all right, now I'm at a point like I don't need to devalue myself or my time or our prices or whatever. Now this is the price, this is what it is, take it or leave it.
It's a great question. I think in every business we get used to these discounts, right? And once you give it, you get tied to it, and then you remove your discount, you don't get any sales. We had this exact same problem for our brand. We had a brand that was everywhere and discounts in different places, and then there's this company that says, can you offer your food on a discount with us and the other? And then people start arbitraging that. They go on food delivery, discovery. They go on different platforms to find different discounts at different times, especially if they love the brand. We always had this predicament until we said one day, we decided that there's a difference between a discount customer and a brand customer. A brand customer is someone that pays full price. A discount customer is someone who's coming for a discount and they're not loyal. So it's good to differentiate between the two. And what we found out is that the only discount we gave after that point, I remember it was as good as yesterday. This is about 2018. We had there was a big tug of war in the office between where should this decision go? And what we agreed is two things. Number one, no more discounts except first-time user discount. I want to get on top of the list. If I offer a first-time discount, I'll get there. If someone tries it and doesn't want to pay me, and the first-time offer discount cannot be more than like 15%, because then it's not real. If you're offering something like 25% off, it means you're pricing already, you're scamming the customer.
It's a loss now.
Yeah. It's at a loss. Your customer feels like, why should they pay the full price? But if it's just a first-time user discount and the guy buys, so there's that. And then we decided to make another brand, so with the same subset, with a lower price point. So every price has its own customers. Pampers and Huggies, they can sell the same product. I have a friend that has a tobacco brand, and he says, I sell one tobacco and one packaging, and another one the same exact ingredient also in a different packaging. It just speaks to different people. Mm-hmm. But you don't dilute your brand with discounts. What we found out the hard way was that when you discount something, you put it on Entertainer, nobody will come and pay you the full price, especially if it's like 50%. No discount.
Of course not.
You're devaluing yourself. The first time user discovery discount, basically. First time user discount, for anything. Otherwise, you need to fix your price.
Yeah.
Because if you're not selling at that price, it means there's something wrong. Yeah. So this is with food. Mm-hmm. I'm experienced with food and a few things, not everything. So I don't know if, applies to, every product. But for me personally, I feel scammed if I find something 50% off, then I'm going to pay the full price. I'm not going to pay it.
Yeah, of course. Why would you? Why would you? It's the same thing for half the price. Like how you can't? There's no way a business can justify. There's no justification you can give me that I paid double that someone else did for the same product. It's impossible. What are you gonna tell me? Like there's nothing. Oh, it's our favorite. Okay, I'll go. I'll leave. I'll go to somewhere else. I love the differentiation between a discount customer and a brand customer. Such a great point, because I had someone on the podcast not long ago, and he was talking about, shout out Edham if you're watching this, and he was talking about how there's you have clients in different buckets, because this is a service-based business, which is like what mine is. So that's why I think I related to that example a lot. He's like, you have the Udemy minds, the guys that you have like, it's $5, but you want to see what this is, it's behind the paywall. You have to pay to see what there is. And then you have like the middle, which is like a bunch of people who consume your content but are never going to buy from you. And then he calls, this is your term by the way, he calls them hamurs, the whales, the big ones you want. And these are the guys that you have to give like everything to. Your example is great too, because when I compare those two, and this is another thing you forget about as an entrepreneur, is there's different types of clients. This client is not going to buy at that price. This client doesn't need that offer, So even in my example, over the last couple of months, I started getting requests more from individuals that wanted, support in, launching a podcast and stuff. But I didn't have an offer that I could give them to do that, because my offer is based on launch, production, and whatever. So I'm like, okay, I have to take the big offer. I'm like, I can't give you the same offer for a less price. That's not fair, as we were just saying. So how can I convert what I do and like break it down and come up with a cleaner, smaller, doesn't take as much time, still good revenue, you get what you want at the end of the day package that I can offer to people. But again, that is something that I think we also forget, that there's different buckets.
Offer.
Yeah. Make a new offer. Yeah.
Like a different one for a different target market. But don't like discount the initial one and make it look like you're devaluing the experience.
Yeah. No, exactly.
You go for the premier experience or the basic one. But if you sell the premier at a 50% discount, it's a bad branding job.
100%. And just imagine if someone finds out.
It's like you go to these shops, they say 80% off. It's like, why would I, like 80% off for a shirt and pants? And then you think, okay, this is like, it's weird. If I'm talking about they got my attention, which is good.
Yeah.
But I'm not paying $100 for something I can pay $20 for, like on discount.
Yeah.
Like that's nuts.
No, it is, absolutely. And you were talking about, earlier in the conversation, you mentioned luck. Now, I've had lots of debates on luck on the podcast. I have a specific view, and I think I share your view, which is you create your own luck. But again, that's nice to say, but how do you convert? Me and you sat down, and we tell people, guys, luck is something you need to create your own luck, and everyone's like, great, Khalid, Mahmoud, thanks for telling us that, guys. How do I create, what do I have to do every day to create this luck that I will one day come and get? And you said something very important too. Like people think, when they say oh, he got lucky. No, he was in a position to be able to leverage that opportunity.
Let me tell you how I made my first million.
Sure.
I was sitting down in the bank, the first bank I worked for, nice desk. I remember I had this cubicle, it was mine, I could put my stuff on it, and I had this document in front of me, and I was going through it. It was the HR manual. And I was going through it, and I realized they had these car loans and home loans. And I picked up the phone, I called one of my friends. I said, do you know we have 100% finance for car loans and home loans as bank staff? And he said to me, yeah, I just got my car loan. You should get a car loan too. And I called my other friend, and he said the same thing. And I was thinking about it and thinking, why not I take a home loan? So I called my father, actually, and said to him, Baba, I think I'm going to buy a home. And he thought I was absolutely crazy. He just started working 3 months ago. What do you mean?
Yeah.
At the time, I didn't know what would happen, but I knew I had to, I knew that this was like a hack. So I went to my head of HR, the same person that actually got me my interview. And I went to him and said, look, I'm really nervous. He said, why? Tell me, you're one of the highest performers here with us. What is your issue? I said, I have this paper in front of me and it has 3 rejections on it. And I haven't finished 6 months in the bank. So I'm not eligible for the loan. I haven't finished, it's way above, like, it's touching, like, I need to be a confirmed staff. It's touching half of my salary. Can you help me get this loan? It's in an area that's not. So the third thing was it's in an area which was new at the time, called JBR. Jamaica.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, and no one in the bank knew that place. It wasn't on the approved list. So I went and spoke to him, and he actually approved it for me. He said, all of your friends came to me, and most of the people here came to me for the car loan. You're coming for the home loan. That's a good idea. I'm going to support it. And he signed for me. And I realized you're never going to get if you don't ask. And I walked away from that meeting thinking I would never get it, but I got it. And I held that property. 7 years later, I sold that property and it made me my first $1 million. And that's, opportunity that's there. Everybody in their life today has an opportunity around them that they're just not seeing. It could be their personal brand. It could be something they could develop. It could be something they build, something they can sell for someone else, a contract that's there that gives you an advantage over someone else. If you're in, it depends which industry you're in. Read the things that are already there for you. And this is kind of what happened for me. So, it was like, if you asked me 3 months before joining the bank, if I own a property, I wouldn't have even seen it. If you asked me when I joined the bank, until I read that HR manual, no one would have told me because nobody was doing it. But I just saw it and again, it's, yes, I'm lucky. Yes, the opportunity came to me. I would have not got the opportunity if God didn't help me get the opportunity. But I also think I was reading the contract at the right time, and that, is a little bit into, like the kind of part that I played in my luck.
Of course. You had to, that luck would, like, there's in that equation story you talked about, the luck was you reading that document that day, that time. That's one half. But what completes the luck is you actioned it. That's the difference. Someone told me once, they used this analogy. It's like your luck is like a bus and you're at a bus stop. Buses keep coming every hour, left and right. Non-stop, every day, all the time. You have to decide which bus you're going to go on. And if you don't go on the bus, that opportunity, that's gone. That's for someone else. There's someone else at a bus stop down the line that might take that. And I think that's the best way to describe what you're talking about.
Yeah. We all get lucky. You have to know when luck hits you by being at least aware about what it would look like if you got lucky. Visualize it.
Absolutely.
Like, what if you have no vision? What if you are already lucky?
Yeah, exactly.
Like something, you were going to get hit by a bus on the way here and you didn't. You already was lucky.
Exactly.
But you don't know, you don't appreciate. And I think, it's a lot about mindset. Like,
yeah. Mindset is such a crucial, mindset will dictate how you look at the world, how you see things, how you reframe things. Even like I tell people all the time, like with what I do now, I'm like, the fact that I have a business doing what I'm doing is pure luck. I started this podcast 5 years ago because I just love talking to people and I wanted to learn and I wanted to create a platform for people to learn together. And I was just doing it because I love to do it. No money, no whatever. And then, subhanAllah, don't ask me why. 2 years ago, people not just here, but in the region started being like, what's this podcast thing? Like, what is that? And now everyone's brother, mother, and sister wants a podcast. But to use your point, I'm like, when I started that, it's not like I knew, 5 years, this will be my business and I'll be doing this. Like, pure luck. I started down this path. Life, God, whatever you want, created this environment that all of a sudden everyone wants what you do. That's not me. That's pure
But you
luck.
can't be doing something, like, good for you, because if you were doing something that everyone was doing anyways, you wouldn't position yourself for luck.
Well, that's true. Also,
that's a safe bet.
Exactly. That's also true. Also very true. That's a good point. I shouldn't discount that part.
I think we tend to underestimate ourselves as well a little bit.
Yeah,
as humans,
which is
especially if you achieve something in your life. Usually achievers, they push themselves down.
Yeah, well, yeah. It's like, that's it. That was the one lucky card, the one goose. So on this point, I'm so happy you brought that up because So now, so the work you do now is you act you act as an advisor, like as an investor, helping companies build. So tell us more about what you're doing like right now.
At this point, I'm invested in a couple of companies, and I also I run a podcast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Business with Bartawi was created, the podcast. I have to bring the smartest people I know, from all walks of life, to share their stories, for the person that's seeing it to realize that, not just for my kids, for everyone that's watching it. Some of the people that watch it are even my age or older, and for them to realize, and the younger generation to realize, that these people are around us. They are real. They have real stories with challenges in those stories, and they're accessible as well. And that was why I created the podcast Business with Bartawi, which gives me so much, a platform to meet people, to give them to expose the parts of them that would really sit with my entrepreneurs and target audience that like to watch the show. And for me, that is something that speaks to my inner self, something that I enjoy doing, whether it was banking, which relied on human connection. The podcast also for me relies on human connection. So I find, I don't see it, I get told a lot that I work a lot, but I don't see it like a job, to be honest with you. When, it was the same with the banking stuff. Sometimes I'd go on these meetings that would go on, for many hours after work. And for me, I didn't see it like work. I would get so engaged with my client, go from here to there and become friends with them almost. I didn't see it like work. Mm-hmm. And I think, there's that part of it too, which is, I think work-life balance is important.
Yeah. As someone like yourself who's built a business before, I know that comes with years of lessons and learnings about, having that balance, because like you said, I think we're in the mindset of go, like as an entrepreneur, you have to go, because if you stop, like someone else is going to win, but you don't realize that, like, if you just pause just a little bit.
Like I have a Saudi client, they messaged me yesterday, and the client messaged me, and I looked at the phone, and I thought to myself, I have one of a few options, but the best option would be for me to call her manager and tell her manager that this is my weekend, and this is a company, and I know the guy. So I just called the owner of the company, and I said, I hope you're enjoying your day off. And he said, no, us in Saudi, we work on Sunday. And that's when I realized, they have a working day.
Yeah, it's a work day.
Yeah. So I messaged the girl back and said, look, for us, we're on a day off today in Dubai. And I decided to put my family first and take Sunday to enjoy, the time off, so I could be more productive on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. But if you asked me 10 years ago, no.
Yeah, I know. I know for sure that would not have been your answer, no. Like 100%. So I know now you are, you're an investor, you have like clients, I guess, that you help, them scale and build their businesses. Now, I was thinking about this because, you built a business and you exited. And it was successful. So if you're looking at like let's say the entrepreneurship story, you completed it. You had the start and you finished. You got to the finish line, you won. That, like, from my perspective, I'm like, sold a successful business. That's a win. Okay. Now naturally, you have all the experience of building a business, right? So naturally, what people in your position do is once you've exited, you go into more consulting, advisory roles, helping, younger stage entrepreneurs, startups, whatever, because you have that experience. But you know better than anyone, given everything we've talked about today and whatever, for your story to have worked, there are so many things out of your control that had to happen for it to work. For example, because everyone can work as super hard, everyone can have the best stuff, everyone whatever, but in your case, for example, it was the timing of when you had the idea. That was still new here. There was, working with the donor place who gave you that experience, and then you did that. So there was so many little things that were in or out of your control that created this chemistry and formula for this to be the story that you tell me here today. Now, so that's why I started to think about, I'm like, if you've been successful as an entrepreneur once, that doesn't guarantee you'll be successful the second time, or does it? I don't know. What do you think?
I think exactly that it's not about, it's not that every time you do it, you do it. So there's always a lesson to learn. I think I'm still learning. I think, when I was 13 years old, I thought that the people who were 30 had it figured out.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. At 30 years old, you realize that everyone's still lost.
Yes.
Everyone's still learning.
Yeah, 100%.
So if I was watching this podcast and I was 18 years old thinking of doing a business, I would try to realize that even this person that sold the business might have a little bit more experience than me, but it's the emotional stuff I have to get over, the small wins, the daily stuff I need to do in my life, the habits I need to create that will give me the outcome I want. So I think, no, it doesn't guarantee me a win at all. Again, I don't think everything I touch turns to gold. Everyone wants that, right? But you learn something each time. I can give you countless times that I failed. I invested in a company, got them to Dubai, one of the companies. I thought, this is it. And, tie up with 100 restaurants, all good, boom. You realize, wait, I learned something new. I learned that if I'm going to bring a company from another place, and that place is 95% one nationality, if I bring them to Dubai, Dubai is actually multicultural and not everyone has the same taste. And
Good
that
point.
one nationality happens to be in the minority and it's irrelevant. So no, the product doesn't work. And you try another product. So you always learn something new. I think, even you can learn it investing. You can invest in Bitcoin and learn to be patient because you lost the first time. You can learn not to do leverage if you're a heavy leverage trader. So I think for each of us, it's different, the thing they need to learn. And I'm, always humbled every time I think, I did something more. You get, but yeah, I think, I was watching the other day, this guy, he was going and interviewing people, they go up with the mic and they ask. And he said, I met millionaires and I met normal people and I met broke people and I met billionaires. And he said, if you put billionaires on one extreme and you put broke people on the other, he said, people that are broke, when you go to them, they always have all the answers and they know everything. But when you go to the billionaire, he's always trying to learn something, get one new data set out of you, learn one new thing from you. And that's the key difference. And, so I think I'm not saying anything except the more I think I'm achieving, the more I realized I get humbled and that I know nothing. Like my daughter who's 15 would say something and I'd learn from her and say, wow, that's so smart. Like, the other day we were sitting, she said, you got a few comments on your picture on one of your posts. She said, you should only like the comments that are negative and are funny. Don't like the normal ones. If you like the normal ones, people will just think you're normal. So, again, it's just an idea. It's out of the box. But, I said, what about the people that are in my proximity that would not get it? She said, then they don't vibe with you. Again, it's a way of thinking, right? If someone
100%.
doesn't vibe with you, would they unfollow you? She said, no. If you think about that, that's deep. Like it's psychological, right? Like if someone sees you do something different, like a stupid comment, so the person doesn't feel that you're bothered, but then why should the person looking at it even pay attention to it? They wouldn't unfollow you. And that's an idea.
Yeah, of course.
As
of course.
deep as it is.
Yeah,
it's just something I learned. Like, interesting.
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking in that way before you said this to me.
Yeah.
So, life is about keeping open, thing to failure and to embracing it every day.
Yeah.
Because every day I have a plan that I fail. Every time I want to go, I don't do the gym as hard as I thought I would do the day before. And, am I going to beat myself up about it? No, I just try to show up.
Yeah.
And everyone has, something that something that they really want to do, but they're not showing up for it.
Yeah. I always say, I think at the end of your life, like the way I will judge the success of my life is, did I live the way I wanted to, in the sense, like, not maybe in terms of achievements, but as a person, did I hit all those things? And did I, more than anything, did I beat that negative voice inside my head that tells you, hey, Mahmoud, man, why are you going to the gym, bro? You went yesterday.
Yeah.
Relax. You earned the rest. You earned that voice. if at the end of life on the scoreboard you have more wins than losses against that voice, I think, alhamdulillah, you've had a great life.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah. Mahmoud, man, I just have two more questions for you. Well, actually three. These are, and I wanted to round off just with coming back to the podcast for a second. So, and now you've been running it for 25 episodes, so like a couple months now. I'm curious, you're 25 episodes in. What have you, I guess, because also you're the host too. So like, what have you learned being a host and like running a podcast? Like, what have you learned from your conversations? What's one takeaway you can probably share with us so far?
That's a very interesting question. 25 episodes in, and I sit with different people. The main thing I learned is that you learn much more when you keep your mouth shut and you listen. So hosting a podcast taught me patience, taught me to listen carefully so you can ask constructive questions, and all starts with listening. So it really humbled me and taught me to listen. For me, podcasting was really something that, the first podcast 6 months ago, I sat down, and it was actually with a competitor kind of called Kekal, and I had managed to get him on the show, and now he's sitting down right next to me, this guy with huge arms and big presence, manages 500 people. Kekal's a huge brand.
Mm-hmm.
And he's sitting next to me, and I have my iPad in front of me, and I'm looking at the questions, and I'm thinking to myself, don't mess this up, Mahmoud. Don't mess this up, Mahmoud. You're going to mess it up. You're going to forget. You're going to forget. And I'm trying to look at this and memorize it.
Yeah.
And the lights go on. And oh my God, that moment, I couldn't do anything but tell him. I said, listen, this is the first podcast I ever do as a host. I'm trying to memorize this and repeat it to you. And guess what he tells me? He says, I have dyslexia. I can't read or write. So you're good, right? And I was like, wow, okay. So this person is cool. They're cool. They can't read and write. I should just have a conversation with them. Put the iPad away. And that was the beginning of my journey, more, less calculated, more listening, more with people, knowing that you can mess it up. It's okay. You might end up with someone that can't read and write, and still have a great episode.
Of course.
So, the story of those and a few other people, I think everyone has a story. I think, one question I ask myself quite a bit is, are there enough podcasters? Are there enough people that want to get on podcasts? And I always get back to the same answer, is that there's 8 billion unique stories because there's 8 billion people. So there cannot be enough podcasters if you think about it, right?
That's true, yeah. Not everyone's going to have one.
If everyone knew to say a good story or wants to say their story.
Yeah. They would do it.
They would do it.
And I think podcasting in particular, what I've learned over the last, these past 5 years is I know a lot of people want to start podcasts now. I know in not even long time, in 2 years, 2 to 3 years, I'd say 70 to 80% of the ones who started won't be there in 2 or 3 years because they don't know, they don't have the patience, they won't appreciate the amount of work it takes to like make this happen. So the fact I don't know if you know these statistics, 44% of new podcasts stop after episode 3 and 80% stop after episode 10. You're on episode 25, so congratulations. You're already in the top 20% globally of people who do podcasts. So please, when I see people who have like hit 20, hit 20 and 25, I'm like, okay, you ready here? Keep going. Keep going because it's really gonna start to snowball like the more you continue. Mahmoud, I have 2 questions I ask every guest on my podcast to round off. So first of all, looking back at your life, when I ask you the question, either personally or professionally, when I ask you the question, what are you most proud of for yourself? What would you say?
That's a great question. The most proud of for myself is that I keep my dignity and I think of impacting the people that I love and impacting the world with things that I think are good for me. So I love that I've been able to do things that I love. I'm proud that I'm able to influence and impact the people around me in a positive way, whether it's through healthy food, whether it's through a podcast with sharing information. I think that is real, wealth. Wealth is, if you can enjoy the things that you do, if you're not tied too much in any way to something or someone, but you're able to live in a way that you want. And you have more days that you tell the voice in your head, I can do it. That's also important. I've noticed that the day that the other guy in my head wins usually is the day of doubt. It's the day that everything's against you, and we all have it. I think the thing that I'm most fortunate about is my health and my family. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. I'm a firm believer that the game is won in the mind. I sat with a football coach. This is going off topic, but I sat with a football coach and I asked him once, I said, sometimes you see these comebacks, you find the team, they come and they smash I was once watching Manchester United and Bayern Munich, and Manchester United, they scored the third goal like in the 90th. It was a final of a Champions League. They had scored the last 2 goals in the 90th minute on. And like, what happens to a team, not just a person, a team that makes them do it? Like, you have a Tyson versus, and this was Tyson's coach speaking. He said that 75% of it was in the mind. And he would train Tyson, almost hypnotizing him to win even before the match. Like, Tyson's going there, physically 25% chance. Mentally, he gamed the other person 100 times. In his mind, his coach said there was no doubt that he was going to win. And when reality and your mental is so strong, there's no opponent for you.
That's true, by the way.
It's just you and yourself, where you were last year, and you compare, and that kind of grit, they call it.
Yeah, 100%. That's such a great example, because like that. But I think something we have to add to this, to what you're saying, I completely agree, but to build that, I think out of everything we've talked about today and everything you will experience in your life, building that mindset is probably building and maintaining that mindset is, I think, the hardest thing, because I'm just reflecting on my own story. So like in the last 2 years, I was super overweight and I lost like 30 kilos or whatever. And I had the whole morning routine.
Great job.
Thank you, bro. Thank you. And I was like religious. On holidays, I'm still doing my walks. I'm still doing my reading. And then this year came, and I was so consistent for so long, like a year and a half, day in, day out. So it became a part of my life that I was, and because it wasn't the first time this has happened to me. This is my second rebirth, that has happened in my life. I'm like, khalas, like now I've been so consistent for so long, impossible I'll fall off. And I'll tell you, everyone here can listen, I fell off the last 4 months. My routine gone, not just like it, like it disappeared. And like now I feel like past couple of weeks I've been getting back slowly, whatever. But like it humbled me so much. Like I thought like I was bulletproof, and then this just knocked me like off my ass. So that's why I appreciate what you're saying, because now I'm not rebuilding from zero, but I'm rebuilding.
Muscle memory.
Thank you.
But it's for everything. It's
yeah,
for
of
everything.
course.
That person in your mind who says you can't do it shows up every day.
100%.
It's not like you get to a point where he doesn't show up.
Yeah. That's so true, by the way. He's always there.
Always there.
Always there. Yeah.
One more, or tomorrow.
Yeah.
No, it's not tomorrow.
Yeah.
You tell it, today I'm going to do it. Today I'm going to look in the mirror and say I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
Today I'm going to put the first, nail down to build my house. I'm going to, there has to be that, a realization that, it's, why wait to your first heart attack?
Yeah. That's true. I agree 100%.
Because they say that statistically that's the time where you do it.
We are, I think as people, we are just naturally we are very reactive. It's because it's like, unless the threat is in front of my face, later. Why are you worried, bro? What's happening?
It looks like you, the same profile, the same thing.
Don't worry, but it's not me, so it's fine. It's okay. And then it happens and you're like, oh shit, why didn't I before, or whatever. The taking action when there's no threat is the hardest part, but that is what prepares you best for when that threat inevitably will come. And for my last question, Mahmoud, what is the message you'd like everyone to take home with them today?
The message I want everyone to take home with them today is, guys, it's a very logical world, but before logic, you need dealing with humans, so focus on emotions. This is what I would tell myself 20 years ago. I'm not that old, but if I was just starting out, I would realize that I don't need to answer the question right. I need to connect with a human being. That's the thing I'll tell myself. I'd always try to answer the question right and just make me look like the smart one, that the person who's emotionally intelligent would just shoot me down because they didn't like me, or they thought I was smart, they were forced to work with me. That's kind of the emotion. But what if they liked you and you are smart, you are good enough, if you're watching this podcast, you're way ahead of other people, that's for sure. You tuned in to watch a podcast about two people who talk about non-entertainment stuff. There's a bit of but it's a business. Setting up and franchising. And so if you're tuning into this, you're already way ahead from the numbers point of view. Focus on that human thing in your network. There's relationships there. Some people that love you, some people that, you need to pay attention to. And I think, start with those. How do you connect with people? If you can connect with them and you can extend your network of connection, a lot of things, they happen. In the Arab world, they call it wasta, but I don't even think it's wasta. I think you just got to make people to like you. Like, you can't have a wasta with someone that doesn't like you.
Very true.
Never.
Of course. Yeah, of course not.
Like, why? But what if someone likes you and wants to help you and doesn't want anything from you?
Why not?
Why do you not think in that way? That guy from the HR that helped me, he didn't want anything from me. He thought this guy went out of his way. He must be brave to call me, because I'm telling you, it took me a week to sum up the energy to call that guy and to say, please give me a chance. You think that it's you, but I'm lucky that I found somebody who had enough empathy to realize that this young man looks up to me.
Yeah.
He wants another chance. He might have messed up. I don't know what he did, but give him a chance. Let him meet someone else. And I think emotionally, that's the emotionally, that emotional part is more to focus on than the logical part. We get everything on ChatGPT or YouTube. On this podcast, you learn the XO, the
yes,
part, the logical,
the technique. Yeah.
The technique.
Yeah.
But what it won't teach you is how to be good with people.
Yeah.
And, Jeff Bezos, founder of Amazon, CEO of Amazon, he said, very famous quote. He says, "It's harder to be kind than to be clever."
That's very true.
So I would leave everyone with that similar message from my end, is think about being kind to get what you want, and you are also clever. You're born clever.
Yeah.
You can learn to be clever.
Yeah. I think the timing of this message is so relevant for where we are, not just in the podcast today, but in the world today. You see it on LinkedIn, you see the shift for people craving authenticity, for connecting with personal brands. That's why personal branding has become such a popular thing, which podcasts are a great, vehicle for. And what I love about what you said is that I think people forget about the connection part, and you think like to advance myself in my life, I need to build my knowledge, my book knowledge, I have to, so that when I'm in a position that someone asks me that question, I will answer, I will be seen of value, and therefore I will get that opportunity. But like you said, and from conversations I've had on the podcast, from my experience, like I had someone come to me recently and he was like, Khalid, I want to scale my business. You're the first person I thought of. Cool. So went down, we had a conversation, I sat with him, and when he was telling me what he needed for the business, I'm like, and I was like, and I told him straight up, I'm like, my man, look, I'm going to be very honest with you. And he's a friend, so I want to be, I'm always going to be very honest. I'm like, I have in my head right now, I'm live telling you two things. I have the business brain of Khalid, like, there's a potential opportunity here to make money. And then there's the personal, like Khalid, who Khalid is, who's saying, you're probably not the best person to help this guy right now, And I decided, and I told him, I'm like, at the end of the day, you came to me because you want help. I believe in paying it forward, and my credibility is worth more than any, you can't put a price on my credibility. So I'm like, I will connect you with the guy who's helping me build mine, because I've learned a lot, obviously. He's still building too, but he's earlier in the journey than I am. I'm in the middle, let's say, and he's still at the beginning. So I do have things to teach him and I can help him, but I'm probably not the best guy because I'm working with someone who's better been there, done it before, so I'm learning. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to connect you with that guy. I think he will be someone who can help you better. But I try to live by what you talked about. Like you will remember Khalid as, oh, I could have easily pretended to be like, yeah, and I'll charge you this, and this is what's going to happen. But what I try to do with the podcast, what I try to do with content on LinkedIn, what I try to do, how I try to act is, I want to be honest. You know, sometimes it might shoot me in the foot. I might lose opportunity. That honestly might make me lose opportunities. But I like to believe that, you know, trying to be a good person and pay it forward down the line, some way, somehow, it comes back to you. So yeah, that message hit home for me. So that's why I really resonated with that, man. Mahmoud, bro, this has been such a fun conversation. I've watched, the podcast, so I've seen, the way you speak and your cadence and the knowledge, and you've had some great guests as well. Love the production, love the consistency. And there's sometimes I bring people on the show, I'm like, this is going to be a great conversation. Just from the person, I can tell, I feel like I'm going to have a great conversation. And this has been amazing. You've taught me about franchising and food and this, and we've deep dived on podcasts and went all around the world and everything in between. And I think anyone looking to start a business or a food business, or you want a franchise, or you're an entrepreneur, you're a founder, there's so much they could take away from this conversation. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for your time, Habibi, and for coming on the show. If people want to reach out with you, work with you, connect with you, check out the podcast, where can we get in touch?
Thank you so much. For anyone that wants to get in touch with me, my Instagram is my last name. It's Bartawi. And my podcast is also called Business with Bartawi. So it's just people I find interesting, have a story, bring them, they share. And yeah, that's pretty much it. It was a great conversation, Khalid. You wrote to me the first time and I thought, wow, this person's actually doing something good. And I'm lucky I found the time to be able to come and to meet you. And, this is a great opportunity. I think podcasting is definitely going to grow. I just think I have a small comment.
Please.
For all, the people that want to start a podcast. It's just an idea. I'm okay to have an idea, right? What if the idea is that it's good to start a podcast if you're trying to develop a personal brand? But if you're a company, I think it's better to sponsor a podcast.
Yeah.
As an idea.
Of course.
And I think more and more people will become aware of it. I think as a company, you don't necessarily have to set up your own podcast. You could sponsor a podcast. Mm-hmm. And I'm just going to throw it out there because I see a lot of company owners I know that are good at making money, but not good at, maybe doing a podcast.
Yeah.
And maybe they can sponsor a podcast.
Of course.
And that's pretty much, the message I want to leave for non-company owners who want to do a personal brand or just, make better contacts. That's a good idea. But if you're a company owner and your time's tied up, mm-hmm. I would definitely recommend that. I see in other parts of the world it's growing as well.
It is. You're 100% right. And there's a lot more ad revenue, even locally and across the region, that is going more into podcasts. Companies are starting to see the value and sponsor and do all these things. So guys, if you want to check out Mahmoud's stuff, we're going to put everything in the show notes. If you got a podcast, he just gave you a great idea too. Mahmoud, man, thank you so much. This has been an absolute pleasure.
You're welcome, Khalid. And for your subscribers that got this far and didn't press the like button, press the like button, guys.
Please, yes, that would be great. Thank you,
Khalid.
Thank you for the reminder.
For sure, like, subscribe.
Yeah.
Let's have more of these things.
100%.
Pleasure to be here, Khalid.
Habibi, thank you so much, man. Guys, so everyone listening, please make sure to like, follow, share, subscribe to the podcast. I hope it helps pod on all channels. And as always, guys, hope it helps. Peace. And that's another episode in the bag, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. The goal of this podcast is to provide, as I like to call it, education on demand. We cover a wide range of topics, and the goal is to provide you with the knowledge, the tools, and the insights to improve your lives both personally and professionally. And if you're enjoying the show and you're enjoying the content, if you could please do me the small favor of hitting that subscribe button, would really help me build the show and build the channel, and that's all I ask. Stay tuned for more inspiring conversations, bigger guests, and as always, guys, hope it helps. Peace.